Good evening on the 14th of June 2022. A long due tiny update about our grazing operation with sheep. Maybe you see them run in the distance, one of the lambs. In Värmland, Sweden at the 60th parallel. And I'm just captured, apart from that little bit of rainbow and the deluge that might be coming down any moment, coming this way slowly, by the situation, the condition of the grass. This here is the boundary line between the neighbors and our land. This inside the perimeter fence has been grazed. They left this bit here. Well, I would have to look that up. Gosh, I don't know. It's less than 2 weeks ago. Yeah. And they've been outside here just before that. So what would that be? Maybe 3, maybe towards 4 weeks ago. Look at how much grass there is there. Look at how you can hardly see the ground. It is before the 21st of June, so before ideal mowing time, so this grass is definitely still growing. But it has been grazed already this growing season. This is what has grown back. This looked like a mown field with quite a bit of manure on it. It was short grass. This is what grew back. This is the neighbor's land, right next to it. So I expect no big differences in soil quality in terms of what was there before we got here. Both parts have been, previous to our starting with sheep, been used to produce hay. So it was a 1 time a year mowing, hay removal, and that's that. That's all the management that happened for at least a good few years before we got here. The last 2 years things changed a little bit on the neighbor's piece of land. It used to be mown by someone who kept cows. He quit that last year, and so now people manage their land here by just mowing, and in such a way that the grass is hacked into small pieces and they just leave it on the ground, so feeding the soil that way. So here we can say we have I really think that you can say that an intense grazing situation. It's 26 animals now, and I move them every day, sometimes a bit more, very rarely once every 1.5 or 2 days. That's very rare, but they will go through almost 2 hectares twice this growing season, and some parts probably 3 times. That is, I think, intense grazing. And every time they graze it down to the ground almost, right? So it looks like a mown lawn almost, although just slightly messier. This has been growing all year. And apart from that one mowing late summer last year and the late mowing last summer, or the year before, and so on and so forth, it has just rested. Here I see the leftovers of the grass from last year. Crossing the border here, I can see bits deep down below, but here it's obvious, and it's not just one bit that I chose. I can see it shine through everywhere, and the grass is not terribly high. It gets a bit better there. I mean, even in small parts, small fields like this, there's a huge difference in density. So here it's a lot better actually. And this is the boundary, so maybe something went on there which explains worse grass there. I don't really know. But here we cross onto our land, which has been grazed not just once, twice already this growing season. The first time was when there was barely anything growing yet, and so we actually had to feed a little bit of hay to keep them going here. But this is twice grazed, pretty dense, pretty high grass, not grazed at all. It may be hard to see on the video, but on average our land certainly doesn't look worse, and I would say in most places it looks better. There's another big difference. Look here, look there, dandelions. That used to be the case on our land as well. Dandelions are indicator species for compaction. Dandelions do grow on loose soil as well, like in our vegetable garden, which is all built on top of the existing soil on a layer of cardboard and heaps of compost. Dandelions grow there as well, but they don't have their typical taproot going deep down to break open compacted soil. Here they do, if you dig them up, which I have done. So from just that one mowing, and of course also the turning and the collection of the hay, so not the last 2 years when the grass was just left in small pieces on the ground, but before that it was always turned and then collected, turned twice or 3 times even. So that's fairly heavy impact by tractor, and perhaps just that has compacted this land enough so that dandelions have a job to do in decompaction. The same farmer who mowed this land used to mow our land before we got the farm, and even did it the first 2 years that we were here. That was 14 and 15. And then he quit because we changed ideas about it. And eventually in 2020 we started with the holistically planned grazing. So it's a pretty new thing still. This is only the 3rd summer that hasn't even started yet. So this will be the 3rd summer that we have sheep here. And somehow the dandelions disappeared. Is that good? Well, if you ask the sheep, maybe it's not perfect, because they do rather like dandelion leaves and flowers. But quite possibly it means that the compaction, which would have been, I expect, pretty much the same on our land as at the neighbours, has been eliminated, which is kind of the expected thing with holistically planned grazing. Just an interesting observation. Just to compare as well. Well, here we are on our bit of land with a bit of bare, or not bare ground. There's litter on it. Tiny bits of bare, but it's a really small area in amongst pretty high dense grass, which has been grazed twice, as has this, but this much more recently. So this looks a bit like a fairly recently mowed lawn, which is growing back a bit. The manure from this point is hardly visible at all anymore. There's a bit lying here, for example, but the dung beetles, the flies, and all the other animals, birds definitely as well, the magpies and what are they called in English? The jackdaws are pretty active, rooting through the manure, looking for all the insect larvae and insects that play with it. And as such, all those animals, in concert with fungi, bacteria, put all that stuff down into the soil to feed the soil life, which then feeds the plants. So expecting this to grow back, to recover fully, like here, but even better, this is not even fully recovered yet. The roots have not been fully recovered yet. Despite there being so much green above ground already, I know that it needs a bit more before the roots are recovered as well, and then you could use it again. Which we will later in the season, when they are done with our 2.5 hectares of permanently fenced area. That should happen beginning of August. They should be done by then. That's the calculation. Then I want them out of the permanently fenced areas so that those can recover entirely before winter starts, before the first snow falls, and hopefully preserves that grass nice and green underneath the snow for the sheep to dig through and find it throughout the whole winter. So, beginning of August, thereabouts, the sheep have to move out of these permanently fenced areas, the 2.5 hectares, and then there is 1.5 hectare left outside the permanent fences, which I can still graze with the help of electric net fences. So then they will go back in here in an area like this and other places on the farm. By then I hope to have sold a good number of the young already, and maybe some mature ones as well. I think I might have to go down to 12 again if I want to have any hope of being able to graze them the whole winter if the weather plays along, or with self-produced hay if the weather does not help, like it didn't help last winter at all. At any rate, I expect this part here, the slightly long lawn, to be recovered well past this stage within 5 weeks, 6 at most. If I would scythe it then, mow it to produce hay, there will still be enough time for it to recover before winter starts. So if that is an intensive use of a grazing area, grazing land, I don't know what is. And yet, every time that it grows back, that it recovers, it actually looks better than the last time, than the time before. This is the magic of holistically planned grazing. Pretty cool. And now, before that deluge comes, I shall run back inside, which is what the sheep will do as well with amazing speed once the drops start falling, or it might even be hill. We'll see about that. Right. Thanks for taking a peek. Cheerio.